Hey, how's it going, everyone? Carlo here from All You Can Board. I'm here as always with my cousin Dylan, and today we are counting down our top 10 cooperative games. So we've each come up with our own independent list. We haven't shared our lists with each other. I imagine there's probably going to be a little bit of overlap. What makes a good cooperative game to you? What do you look for in a good cooperative game?
I feel like replayability is almost a little bit more important in this category because usually a lot of times you're playing co-op games with someone like, say, a partner or a friend consistently or whatever, so you want to be coming back to something and not getting bored of it, so you don't have to just like get rid of it on your shelf, replace it after. So that was one thing, and also just not allowing too much for one person taking control of everything and just sort of like dictating stuff, but at the same time having it be open enough that if someone is, less experienced with board games or that game in particular, that someone can lean on the other person and not feel like it's like kind of that give and take of both.
Yeah, you want to give everyone their own sense of agency, but you don't want one player's bad move to ruin it for everyone. If someone else couldn't say like, oh, I just want to maybe point out something you might be overlooking, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I'm going to throw it over to you to start off with pick number 10.
Okay, my pick number 10 is a newer game that I played a whole bunch of with Braden, actually, and that is Decorum. So Decorum is a cooperative game, and obviously, and the reason I put it on here is it is a cooperative kind of campaign game. So it's not really like, it's not listed as a campaign game. That's probably the wrong way to even word it, but it does come with a list of like envelopes and missions that you're essentially going to do. You can play this with more than two, so it can be a cooperative game for up to 4 players. I think it's probably a game that'll function the best at 2. It's based on what I read and based on it. I think that's where you get the most envelopes and most missions to do.
Yep.
But you're essentially having to decorate the interior of your house, and you're working together with limited information, limited knowledge of what everyone's goals are. So I know what I want to make this house beautiful, and Braden knows what he wants to make it beautiful, and we have to kind of figure out what that is as we go until we have reached perfect. There's a word for it, but whatever it is, like
harmony or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're reaching that complete balance and everything. So I might have something that says I can't have any blue items in the lower half of the house. And Braden doesn't know that, and so he'll put something there, and he has to ask me, how do you feel about that? And I have to say, oh, I hate that there. And then he's thinking, okay, so why does he hate that there? And you're slowly like discerning things as you go. The missions, the rounds play super quickly. There's a bunch in there. They get progressively harder. It's a game I could see sitting down, even though like Braden and I played and enjoyed it a bunch. I could see someone getting this for themselves and their partner and just sitting down and having a really good time, kind of coming back to it a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can then play with 3 or 4 players as well and continue to explore it that way is really cool. It's not limited just to being like a 2-player cooperative game, but lots of fun. The characters and the story elements are actually really, really like, they're light, but they're just like really fun and interesting. So I really like it. I want to go back to it. I think we played like the first like 7 or 8 missions. We played 7 or 8 games of it or whatever. It's really fun, and I think it'll only get better as we get like to the more complicated ones and things start.
That's what I was going to ask, is have you noticed it getting really challenging, and are you kind of craving that added level of challenge?
I really want to see how challenging it gets, but even by the last few, it seems like every time we looked at our cards, both of us out loud would be saying something like, oh god, like, oh my god, this is like, and just like, oh, this is tough.
Good. That's
and then you end up pulling it off, and then you're like, okay, but now what's the next one gonna be, right? So
I think it's 30 unique scenarios, not bad.
Yeah, it's a really fun game, and I think it's for anyone interested in cooperative games and like lighter ones, I think this is a good one to check out.
Cool. Yeah, very interesting theme. I definitely want to try that out.
Yeah, that's Decorum, my number 10.
Nice pick. I might have to. I can't remember. Is that one replayable? Is that something I could borrow one day, or is it modified?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can board and play.
Right, you just can't play it again with someone who hasn't, because you'll know things that person doesn't.
I could, like, it's been actually long enough since I've played with Braden that if I were to sit down and play with you, I'd forget what the other person's goals are. So, like, you just have to have separation from it for a while for it to work that way.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. My number 10 game is a game that we, I guess, co-own, I believe. And I have a feeling it might also be on your list, but we'll see.
Yep.
That is The Loop. Oh, that is The Loop. Curious to see where it's on your list now. So this is one, we covered it pretty recently on the channel. We covered the base game itself, I believe, in an Own It, Play It, or Skip It video, and then I think you did a video also covering the expansion.
Yep.
So this is a cooperative game, very much in the kind of style of something like Pandemic or Spirit Island, in the sense that there's kind of like a little, I don't want to call it a map, it's more of a board, but it's kind of one of those like putting out fires games, right? Like there's these cubes that are amassing, and there's this little cube tower in the middle of the board where you drop cubes into and it spits them out in random directions kind of thing, and you're trying not to get overloaded. There's this evil genius, Dr. Foe, and there's like, the game has time travel. There's all kinds of cool stuff. It's basically, in many ways, it's simpler than Pandemic. The rules are fairly simple. You have a pretty limited number of like cards that you have, but they're all very interesting. I think that was the thing that stood out to us most about this game, or at least one of them, was how fun the cards are to play with, the artwork, the theme of them, everything. The combos, the turns that you can do with kind of messing around with the time travel and taking cubes to move around the board. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff. I think the only reason why this isn't higher on my list is that we've played, I think, 3, 4 times, 5 times, whatever, explored a bunch of the scenarios. I don't have this like burning desire to go back to it and play it again anytime soon, really. But it's one that I don't think I would ever turn down a game of, just because of how, like, what does it say on here, even 60 minutes? I feel like one of the games we played took even less than that.
Yeah, it fluctuates 45, a lot, I was gonna say.
Depending on the scenario and stuff. So there's a lot of variability in the box. It's a very easy like intro game to teach people. And considering it kind of has that Pandemic and Spirit Island formula, it still does enough different, and again in a very streamlined way, that I think it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't played the loop yet.
Yeah, I will have more to say about this.
Okay, and I'll let you pick.
Yeah, because it was on my list, because that's why I was able to grab it.
It's not number 9, is it?
No, it's not number 9.
Get it out of here. Tell us your number 9.
So my number 9, I don't have it physically here. You own it, and that is Just One. So Just One comes in at number 9. This game is one that just in general on my kind of favorite games has been growing since I've been playing it more, because I think previously, like, for a long time I'd only ever played this one time, and it was at across the board, or I think one time I played with you, whatever it was. It just, I hadn't had enough time to really appreciate it. And then this year I've specifically played it, I think 3 or 4 times, or maybe it was more. Like, I played it with you. I borrowed it from you to take to a work thing. Like,
my copy is usually being lent out to someone. Yeah. Someone else has it right now. But.
Yeah, so I'm legitimately going to buy this game now, because I realize I just need to have it in my collection. And it's so simple, and it's so much fun. And yeah, it is a party game, but the cooperative aspect is less about like. It's not like you're sitting around with people and being like, okay, like, what are we gonna do here? Like, that's literally against the rules. Like, you can't. The cooperative aspect is you just kind of having to know. I guess the better you know the people you're in the room with, and what kind of words they gravitate to, or how complicated they might get, or how they connect with what the clue is, or inside jokes.
Especially, I was gonna say, the inside jokes and the references to movies and shows and things that you can use a clue that tips them off to somewhere, like, oh, we knew that, but that other person wouldn't have known.
Yeah, so it's like trying to know the people in the room, to be like, what clue do I write that isn't going to get canceled out by someone else's? It does function really well as not only a cooperative game, but just as this team building exercise of you do learn about the people you're playing with. So because of the simplicity of it, because of how you don't even really have to subscribe to whatever the points are in this game, you can kind of just play. You don't even have to subscribe to the player count. Everything about it is malleable and fun. It's just a game that's going to climb on all my lists, I think. And yeah, it's number 9, and I've even considered having it higher. I think it was just, there's a lot of competition for different spots. So
that's fair.
Yeah,
it's a great game, and I may or may not have more to say at a later time. Perhaps this video, perhaps in a different video. Who could really say?
All right, fair enough.
All right, so now on to my number 9, which is another game I don't own, and this is the one that I actually have played the least. I've only played this game once, and it was about 6 or 7 years ago now.
Okay, wow,
but it really stuck with me. At the time, it was one of the most impressive cooperative games I'd played, and I'm dying to play this again. That is Legendary Encounters, an Alien deck building game.
Oh, I remember when you played this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when we had that big board game, there was 12 people in my old apartment or whatever, and a friend of mine who I don't get to game with a whole lot, William, brought over his copy of it and taught us, and man, it was such a good experience, because, and it's funny because a couple of my friends at the time, or I think 3 or 4 of my friends that same night, were at a table in the same room just over on the other side playing Aeon's End. Okay, and the games are very similar because they're cooperative deck building games.
I was playing Aeon's End.
Oh, you were there? Yeah. Okay, I was going to say, I thought you were playing Power Grid. No, we all played Power Grid afterwards.
Yeah.
But anyways, you're basically, it's thematic to the Alien movies. I've only ever seen the first Alien, so I can't speak too much to the other ones. And again, because I've played this game only once, and it was years and years ago, the main thing is that it feels very thematic. You're drawing this deck of cards that has these kind of events or people that are kind of on the ship or whatnot, and then at a certain point the alien's going to come out, and there's things that you can do to get the alien to go back in the deck, basically you're kind of running away from the alien. If the alien comes out and attacks your crew and kills everyone early on, you can lose the game very early, like Aeon's End. It can be very punishing. But it was just the feeling of like the tension felt so high. It felt even though I'd like loved playing Aeon's End a bunch up to that point, the tension in this game felt higher than it did in Aeon's End. And just the cooperative aspects of like, it just felt like we were being hunted a bit more. Even when I compare to Aeon's End, where the boss is just kind of like sitting there, you choose how you want to attack it kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just the thematic immersion was among the highest I've had in a cooperative game, and I'm just really eager to try it again.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't know anything about this, and like I said, I only like saw you guys playing it. I didn't even like really like get to go and like witness anything, or not that I remember, anyways. So I've only ever just heard it named. I know nothing about it, but it sounds really cool. And
yeah,
and
you never know when you're gonna flip this. Like, when's the alien coming?
Yeah.
Where is the alien? Like, there's this element of the unknown, and you're just this lack of like there's just uneasy feeling the whole time you play.
Yeah,
so.
that's awesome.
Anyways, it's one I'd like to play again. I haven't tried any of the other Legendary Encounters games. I know there's like a Marvel one and all this other kind of stuff. I've heard a lot of people say the Alien one's the best one, but yeah, I'm curious if anyone here has played any of them. Let me know what you think. And is Alien the best one out there?
Sweet. Good pick.
That was my number 9. So on to your number 8.
My number 8 is The Loop.
There it is.
Yeah, it was pretty close. We were pretty close on it.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot more to add, but I will just say that for a co-op game that uses the pandemic type of formula of like a lot of stuff that's going wrong you have to manage, it just does differentiate itself from a classic like Pandemic, or like
I was gonna say classic. I thought it didn't age well.
From a vintage game.
Call back to retro reviews there.
Yeah, like Pandemic. But it's the card system. It's the fact that like it just feels so fun to like utilize all the different artifacts that are coming out in different interesting ways. Like really, I think the only criticism I really had, not the only criticism, one of the main ones whenever we were talking about was like, just give me more artifacts. Give me more artifacts, give me more scenarios.
That's
like
true.
even in terms of like, if they're gonna keep making expansions and stuff for this, all I really need is just scenarios and artifacts. You don't even have to give me more characters necessarily.
I was going to say, I forgot to mention the characters, and they are interesting, but not quite as much as the cards.
No,
they don't determine as much of how you play the game.
I would love to have so many artifacts at every game. It's just like, like you don't know which ones are coming out, and then what comes out really impacts the way you play. So
and you see different combinations, so you see different combos and stuff.
Yeah. So that's really all I'll add is just it's a easy to approach game. The theme is really inviting. It's going to be something that no one's going to feel too imposing when you're bringing it to the table. It's cooperative, so you guys can help each other out. And the artifacts and all the stuff that comes out, as well as like using character powers and every scenario being pretty different from the other ones, like even with completely different win conditions and stuff.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
the variety and the variability is
it really changes the goals that you have.
Yeah, it'll make it hit the table for a while before you feel bored of it. And by then there'll probably be more expansions and stuff out. So
true.
That is The Loop, number 8.
Nice pick.
Thanks.
All right. My number 8 is one that you own and I do not, and I've only played it once so far, and that is Clover.
Oh, so look at this. Here you go.
Okay, I figured this would be on your list. Yeah. So this is one that I could see. This was the hardest one on the entire list for me to place. I initially had this not even making the top 10. Then the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, it's actually a really good game. I had it almost go up to like 6 or 5, and I thought about it more, and it kind of bumped down. Part of it is that I've only played it once.
Yeah.
Another part of it is that one of the things that we were talking about that we really like in co-op games is the aspect of everyone being able to do their own thing. And I didn't, it wasn't a problem when we played. We only played it once, or I've only played it once, I know you've played it more. But there technically is room for it to happen where someone says, like, one person could right at the start be like, oh, well, because of this and that and whatever, and because of this, and then technically other people go, yeah, fair enough, can't really argue with that. And like a round could play out in that way.
Right.
It's not necessary. It's hard to say whether that's the fault of the game or not, or the fault of the people you're playing with, or whatever. But just in comparison to other like kind of these party games where you're trying to kind of convey clues and get someone to guess clues, there's just other ones that stand out a little bit more for me. But this is very unique. I haven't seen a game do it quite in this way, and trying to, it makes you get inside other people's heads in a different way than games like Just One and Wavelength and all these other games.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed my one play of it, and again, I could see this going way higher, but I could also see maybe after a while, I don't want to say the novelty would wear off. It might also go down on the list, but I don't know. I also need to play at a different player count. Doesn't it go up to 6?
Yep, it does.
Yeah, we only played it with 4, I think, and I think with 6 might be even better.
Yeah, it's I'll have more to say later.
Yeah,
I'm really happy it's on your list even after limited plays, because it was it's not like number one on my list or anything, but it was one of the first games I was like, that's going to be on my list for sure. Like, I know it'll make the top 10.
Yeah.
So.
And the really good sign that we were playing this, I think it was after playing a couple other heavier games, and we just kind of like squeezed this in at the end of a night with people who we might not necessarily like play these types of games with that often.
Yeah.
And it was a hit with everyone. Everyone really enjoyed it. So I just
want
to try it with different groups of people too to see how it lands, and maybe it's a bigger hit with other people as well.
I played it much more than you have so far, and no one has disliked. In fact, everyone has like been like, "What's this game?" Like right away. Like it's been a pretty strong reaction to it every time.
Yeah.
So
it's a great game. So Clover.
Nice. All right, my number 7, right?
Yep.
Is next. My number 7 is a game that I own. But I borrowed to you, and I haven't received it back yet. And that is that is Arkham Horror, the card game.
Okay. This is the one that you're planning on culling.
Game. Yes.
Or considering culling.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm considering that is because it is a really like with how many expansions exist of the game and how much you really have to dedicate to it, I don't think I have enough time in my life to be into Marvel Champions and Arkham.
I was gonna say you had to make a choice.
Yeah, it really came down to that, and obviously like Marvel Champions is such a big part of our channel. And I love it so much that wasn't gonna be the one to go to the wayside. So it was I mean I went pretty hard into Arkham Horror the card game. I have a lot of the expansions and everything, and it's tons of fun. But you really have to find someone that you're going to play with regularly, and you're going to sit down and be like, okay, like we're going to continue this story, and we're going to do the next chapter, we're going to do the next chapter. And when you do that, it is so rewarding. Like I really think when you play it, what you're going to love about it the most is the deck construction. Like having to tackle a scenario, and even between the scenarios, earning cards from having completed a scenario well, or the path you took, you earn other cards, and then adjusting your deck, and then being able to like buy new cards based on like you're constructing your deck in a way to be able to tackle the scenarios. But like it reminded me of aspects of like Magic the Gathering, but not in a combat way, in this way of like how do we tackle this scenario, but you're also wondering what's your like the person you're working with cooperatively, like what's going to be in their deck, how you guys are going to work together. Like it is really, really fun as a cooperative game, as a solo game.
And I like the aspect that if you lose, you can keep going. That's pretty cool.
It's not really a loss. It's just like you had like the worst
result.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as a cooperative game, I think this is like a really, really solid one, and there's so much replayability and longevity here. Like there's constantly more expansions coming out, and there's no signs right now of it stopping. But even just what's already out is so vast. Like there's so many options. It's really hard to like say if you get into this now, even if you play regularly, you're probably going to be good for like a year or two. Like I really don't, unless you're playing every day or something. But like it's just really, really fun. Constructing your decks together is fun. Tackling scenarios, it's hard. Like
I've heard
it is not easy to get through it. So you have to actually work together. It's there's just a lot of things going for it. I wish I had more time. If we didn't run a YouTube channel and I didn't own 150 games or whatever it is at this point, like this would have been one of the games where I was just constantly inviting people over, in the sense that how we did Gloomhaven, and just constantly revisiting like the new expansions out. Like let's get together on Saturday and we're gonna tackle it. Like,
well, and that's what I was gonna ask you is, do you prefer this game solo or 2 players?
I think this one I prefer cooperatively with two or more, or whatever it, or 2 players or whatever, because solo is fun, but with this being so thematic and story driven, and just to experience that by myself doesn't have the same impact as when you were experience with someone and be like, oh my god, like this thing happened, like you want that feedback loop and stuff. For me, this one specifically is different from Marvel Champions in that regard, where I'd rather play this one with someone than I would solo.
That's encouraging.
But it's good solo. I just like that's
and the reason I ask is because I often hear it mentioned among like the best solo games, but I don't hear it as much for best cooperative games, and I was wondering, but cool.
Yeah, that is Arkham Horror the card game.
Okay, and that was number 7, right?
That is 7.
All right, my number 7 is a game I've only played this I think twice, and I don't know if you've played it. I've definitely never played it with you, and it's called Menara.
I have not. No.
So it's a cooperative dexterity, like stacking style game where you pick a difficulty level. I think there's 3 or 4 different levels, and you basically, it's gonna be a little tough to explain, but there's these cardboard platforms. You're building together a series of floors. You're building this thing, and you're basically going to be adding these cardboard pieces on top to build a new floor, and then you have these big wooden kind of cylinders of different colors. And on the cardboard pieces that are on the table, and they're shaped all like, unlike any other board game component, they're like all bent weird and oval shaped, whatever.
Yeah.
And it'll have spots on it for either like a black circle, a red circle, a blue, or I think there's 4 colors in the game. And on your turn, there's an interesting way that you're collecting these cylinders to keep in your supply, and then on your turn you have a task of like placing these cylinders on the colors that match. And anytime, I think it's whenever you make a mistake or something like that, you take a new floor and you put a new floor on there, and then you have to start building up again. But it's because it's cooperative, everyone has that own task. Like, you can't say, here, place this for me. It's like, you are stuck with the responsibility, and if you place something and it's all going to fall down, like, everyone lost because of you, potentially. So there's a lot of, like, pressure. You feel that pressure of, like, oh, I can't let everyone down, and someone's like, no, what are you doing? You're going to, like, that's so risky. Don't do that. But then every once in a while, you're like, no, listen, I got it. I got this. I'm going to, like, ignore the advice from everyone. I'm going to go make this big play, and sometimes it pays off, and people are like, I can't believe it. That was so risky. That was ridiculous. I thought the whole tower was going to fall over.
Yeah.
And I think the game is, like, every time you add a floor, I think there's some rule about the further you go into the game, you might have to keep adding more and more floors and making it harder and harder. Like, the target goal that you have to reach can increase as you play through the game.
Okay.
So it's not like, oh, we just know that we just have to get to floor number 4. Like, no, things, I don't remember again the rules of how that can happen, but man, the stress, like the stress of having to, like, everyone's watching you, and you know that, like, if I mess this up, like, we've played Men at Work, but that's not cooperative.
Yeah.
That's competitive, right?
I was going to say, a lot of what you're saying, like, I just, right away, I'm getting flashbacks to Men at Work.
Yeah, but the fact that it's, like, you're all working together. So I think we played it on either the easiest or the medium difficulty, and I think we did win. But it was very, very close, very, like, tense game.
Yeah.
And I haven't gone back to play it again since. Even on that same difficulty would be fun. I'd like to try a different player count, so I'm kind of curious how it plays, like, with 2 players.
Yeah.
But more than anything, I just want to try the harder difficulties, because I've seen pictures online of people having 8 levels. Like, it looks like it defies the laws of physics when you see this game. Yeah, anyways, I haven't played a cooperative stacking game at all yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
And this one really surprised me.
It sounds great. I didn't know anything about it, but everything you're describing sounds like the same kind of, like, ride I had while playing Men at Work and the fun I had with that. So
yeah, we'll definitely have to try. Well, Hillary and Raj have it, so
okay, awesome.
We'll try it sometime.
We'll play it for sure.
Yeah, so that was number 7 for me. That was Menara.
All right, number 6 for me is Clover. I almost consider putting this higher. I love this game. So what I'll add to it is I played it a number of times with different groups. It's landed every single time. I haven't played it with 6. I think the highest I have played was with 4 or 5. I played with 3 a bunch too. Like, it is so good trying to solve that puzzle, and there's constant laughs around the table as people being like, oh yeah, he definitely means this, and then someone's like, yeah, but did you consider putting this here? And they're like, oh no, but you're right. And then what if he's trying to, and it's like, what is he trying to communicate with this? Like, we can't figure out anything here, and it's honestly, out of every game where one person or multiple people are not allowed to speak, it's the hardest I've ever had not being able to talk. Because
I was gonna
sitting
say that
sitting
role.
there and having to, like, be like, oh my god, like, you, and like,
You almost have to leave the room or just, like, look down.
Seriously.
And just, like, you can't be involved in what people are.
The last time I played, I played with my friends Ryan and Rolly, and they put 3 of the cards in the first, like, 10 seconds in the right spot. They're like, well, like, right away I would think this. I'm in my head, I'm like, oh man, nailing this.
Yeah.
And then they removed all the cards, and they never went back to those layouts. And all I wanted to do was yell at them and be like, you had it.
Yeah.
You had it. Like, you had this. You would have figured it all out. But I can't say anything. It's the hardest I've ever had to, like, keep quiet. But it's so much fun. I even took I took photos of some of the cards and, like, missing cards and stuff, and I actually post them on my Instagram stories to ask people, like, as little mini games of, like, what do you think, what clue do you think you're trying to lead to? Like, that is just a really fun and attractive thing for people to try to figure out, is like the clue and what you're trying to lead them to and stuff. And to do it in this way where you have to, like, when you place a Clover, you're thinking of it from 2 different sides, and you're eliminating 2 of the words essentially, and being like, are we sure that these 2 words aren't being used and these 2 are fitting in this exact formation? It is it's not that it's hard to describe, but I think the fun level is hard to describe. It's not until you've played with people that you realize, like, man, this is a riot. Like, this is just a ton of fun around the table. Really, the only downside I have to it is, and it's not that I think it should accommodate more players, but I almost wish that there was a way that it did, because having this type of style of game with, like, at a family gathering of, like, 12 people or whatever would be the first one I'm grabbing to take.
Yeah.
But I get that, like, you can't just with a game like this be like, now there's 12 people considering stuff. But if they ever
it would be crowded, but if
they ever, like, revisit this and come up with a new version of it because it's popular, that would be what I'd love for them to try to do, is, like, how can we take Clover and accommodate, like, a larger player count, because that's the one thing missing from it that I wish that it had, is, like, a bigger group I could play it in.
Yeah,
but
great game.
Great game.
Yeah.
Number
Look forward
6.
to playing it a lot more. Okay. My number 6 is a game I recently parted ways with. It is a game I played all the way through, though. That is Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. So just a quick note, because I don't know where I would stand if, like, I do think overall Gloomhaven is the better game, but Gloomhaven I left off because it's not fully cooperative. There's a lot of elements where you're trying to pursue retirement goals and all these kind of like personal agenda type things that often go against what you as a group are trying to do. So I did pick Jaws of the Lion because they did go with a more kind of like fully cooperative look on the game. But what I love and what... And I should say, technically, I haven't played Jaws of the Lion cooperatively. I played through the campaign solo.
Yeah,
but
because
the
your
system,
experience...
That's the thing. I played through the entire Gloomhaven campaign. I know enough about the system and the way that it plays when you're trying to work together to go through a scenario and stuff. So what I love is that puzzle of... You can't show your cards. You have limits on, and there's gray areas. Different groups play it differently, but in terms of what you can and can't say to your teammate in terms of what cards you're playing, even the initiative and stuff, like you really do feel that weight of the responsibility that like if something goes wrong, like there isn't any such thing as like alpha gamer or quarterbacking in Gloomhaven. Yeah. You have to manage your own cards. There's that whole hand management thing, but even just the timing, right? Because you might see an enemy that only has like 2 hit points left, and it's the only enemy within my reach and your reach, and we have to figure out who's going to hit that enemy, and what if we both take attack cards, and then one of our cards doesn't end up doing anything, and then how are we choosing to build our characters to... So there's not only the scenario cooperation and how are we going to beat this individual scenario, but long-term over the arc of this campaign, how should I build my character? Are you going to, we don't have a dedicated like tank. Maybe we're both playing characters that don't have a lot of life, so how are we going to survive, right? There's constant cooperation all the way throughout. I could talk a lot more about the game, but I'll leave it at that. I did a full review of Jaws of the Lion, so you can check that out on our channel if you want to know more of my thoughts. But there's not many games that give you that much self-control like over what you're doing while also like a really tough puzzle with your teammate or teammates to figure out.
I'll say right now I left Gloomhaven off this list just because technically it is not fully cooperative, so I was trying to be just honest with that. Otherwise, it probably would have been my number 1 pick just because of my experience with it. And I didn't put Jaws of the Lion on because I haven't played Jaws of the Lion. Even though I could have probably safely put it on and been able to like be confident of where I placed it. I just decided to leave it off. But yeah, totally agree. I'm glad it's on your list. I'm glad it's even this high up on it. Like it's such a great game. It plays over a long period of time. If you talk about the original Gloomhaven, you're talking about like signing up for like potentially years worth of content with someone cooperatively. Like it's just a great series of games, system of games, whatever, for cooperative play. Like I love it. I've talked so much about Gloomhaven, obviously.
And just the idea of like we're going into a dungeon together with your friends to kind of like there's just something very
and it teaches you how to skirt rules like we used to with announcing where our initiative was, where we where it would be like you can't say your exact initiative number, but it says in the rules you're allowed to say like general things like, well, I'm going in like the back half or something. Like you can say things like that, and then we'd be like, well, I'm going in the infancy of the first half of the
and it's like after a while we just got to know, okay, well the infancy means it's probably 10 or lower.
And then someone would be like, infancy as in like, are you just being born or are you
like
2-year-old?
That's when my eye starts twitching and I'm like, shut up, you're ruining it.
Great pick.
Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion.
Nice.
Great cooperative game.
All right, number 5, right?
Yes, number 5.
All right, number 5 for me is a game that continues to climb the more I play it, and I've played it a bunch, and that is Codenames Duet. This has quickly become one of my go-to introduction games. I think it's one of my favorite first date games or couples games, if like however you want to classify it. But just in general, like if I'm playing with someone who hasn't played a lot of board games or has, but like wants something a lighter experience, not a lot of rules overhead. First of all, cooperative games are just a great one to rely on for that, but the Codenames Duet first is a lot of people have played Codenames or understand Codenames, and so it's usually an easier teach because of that, because they're coming from like the know-how of like Codenames is the game where you have to say one word clue and like they already kind of have that foundation. Codenames Duet is harder than Codenames, and you're working together to beat it, and there's a campaign system in here. Like you have the map system where you can basically like go across the world and travel to different locations. Each one has different like amounts of times you can fail or amounts you have to get correctly in amount of turns or whatever to change the game to make it a little bit harder or a little bit easier or whatever. But it's the Codenames foundation. Like you're looking at the board. There's 15 clues total that you have to get together. I have 12, or I can't remember, I'm going to forget the exact numbers, but essentially we share 3 of the clues. Like 3 that are on my side are the same 3 that are going to be on your side, so like for the same words, but all the rest are unique. And then for the assassins, we each share 1 assassin, and the other 2 are unique as well. So there's some interesting stuff where like I can have an assassin on my side, but it could be the clue I'm trying to guess on the other side. So it's really tough. It's actually challenging to win, so you want to come back and beat it. And when you do beat it, you can just like go to the next location on the map and you still have that challenge, and it's connecting you with the person. Like that's why I always say it's one of my favorite first date games or couple games, is like you are like trying to get in sync and pulling from personal experiences if you know the person well on like what clues they're going to get, and it's like taking the team aspect of Codenames and making it the entire game. Like it's just you guys, you're not competing against someone else, right? So I love it. It's so simple, it plays quick. There's obviously so many different key card things that you'll never like encounter the same one twice, and even if you do, it might be flipped the other way. Like so much longevity. I keep coming back to this more and more. Like it's one of the games that's seen the most plays in my collection, in the same way like Patchwork is, just because it ends up being a great gateway game in my collection. So yeah, I knew this was gonna be on the list, and yeah, the more I looked at it, I was like, this is for sure top 5. So that's Codenames at number 5.
This is one that I bought a few months ago and I haven't played yet, but if you had asked me, like, of all the games on your shelf at home, is there anything you would want to play before doing this cooperative games video? This is one that I suspect that I kept looking at it being like, I have a feeling that one day I'm gonna really like this game, but I just haven't had a chance to play it yet.
And you know what's funny is I always forget, then think like, oh yeah, I'm glad I bought that for myself or whatever, and I forgot, like I never even looked or thought twice about this game. The only reason it's in my collection is because Braden bought it for my birthday one year.
Oh, nice.
So I owe Braden for the entire
Braden.
Discovery of Codenames.
Well played. Quick question. Do you think this game has more or less downtime than Codenames? Or is it comparable in terms of like the coming up with the clue?
I think it's about the same. That is probably the one downside. Is like, but you know what? I always, another reason I guess like I think it's a good first date or couples game is that like I find that the downtime isn't nearly as much of a thing in this compared to Codenames, because here it's just the one-on-one aspect. So normally I'm just kind of like smiling and looking at them trying to rack their brain, being like, oh my god, and you ends up being this kind of funny thing where you guys are enjoying the moment together, rather than another team that's not even involved being like, oh my god, this team takes so long to do their turn.
Yeah, you're with a bunch of people in the room, are all sitting there doing nothing.
I think it's way more tolerable and acceptable.
Awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
Codenames Duet, number 5.
Right on. Can't wait to try it. Okay, on to my number 5 now, which is Aeon's End. So this is a game, well, I spoke about it earlier in this video. I also spoke about it in I haven't been doing the thing with the box. Oh, whatever. It's less... Too late. Yeah, more work
animation.
for you to do. Yeah, exactly. So I won't get into too much about the reasons why I've cooled on it, because we talked about that in the games we've cooled on video. But it's a cooperative deck building game. It has a lot of similarities to Legendary Encounters Alien, in the sense that you're each picking... the mage part, you don't pick a mage in Legendary Encounters Alien, you have a character, but play as a mage and you're trying to take down a boss together. You set up a market of cards, kind of like Dominion style, where there's different cards that you can buy throughout the game, and you're basically buying cards that add to your deck. You're going through, there's a random turn order thing where basically every set of 6 turns, the boss is going to go twice, and then depending on player count, the other players are going to share the other 4 turns. But there's these turn order cards that you shuffle up, and so every round, the 6 turns come out in a random order, and then you shuffle those up, and then the next round, so you never know. Sometimes one round could end with the boss getting the last 2 turns, and then they could also get the first and maybe even first 2 turns the next round. So the boss might go 3-4 times in a row and get all these cards out and all these enemies that are helping them. Or we might get a bunch of turns in a row and do a bunch of damage to the boss or whatever. It's all about planning what cards you want to buy. There's interesting stuff this game does that other ones don't, where you can choose the order that cards go into your discard pile, and you don't shuffle your deck when it runs out. You just flip it back over, so you have control over where cards are going to be next to each other. You're putting out spells that stay out and they're kind of prepared for a future round, and then on future rounds you kind of cast them off your board so they're not cluttering your deck. Lots of cool stuff in the game, but it just eventually it ran its course for me, and I always liked it most either solo or 2 players, so I didn't really want to play it anymore 3 or 4 players. So I think it's a great solo game, a great 2-player game. I don't think it's quite as good with 3 or 4 players, but if you're looking for a cooperative kind of boss battling game, or a cooperative deck builder that that deals with boss battling, like, I think it's definitely worth trying. It's a game I played a lot before I eventually got rid of, so it's an excellent game. I'd happily play it any time, but I just don't have it in my collection anymore just because it sort of ran its course for me a little bit.
Yeah, I played this 3 times, but only played against 2 bosses. One time we did the same boss twice, and I enjoyed it all those times, but it was never one that, like, for me anyways, like, really jumped out as, like, I mean, actually the first play I would say it jumped out like, oh man, I really want to play that again. But I wouldn't say it ever like became one where like it's on my list and I never like needed it in my collection.
Right.
But I see the appeal, and like and the coolest and at the same time most frustrating aspect of it was the random turn order. I really liked that. It was unique, it was novel, but it was also like, there could be situations where, like you described, if the boss gets X amount of turns in a row and that ends up being the reason you lose, you could be like, it's just like, for that to be the reason we lose. But
yes.
So like I could see both sides of it, but it is a cool mechanic, and you should just be, I guess, planning for that in advance, being like, you know, that is something we have to consider could be the option. So maybe we need to manage
that,
the boss
and that's
better,
a big part of the game, is like over planning for every possible, like, you know, because the game is very, very tough, and the amount of times that like we 15-20 minutes into the game and that happens, and then we're like, are we really going to do, like, unset up the game, redo the market deck, redo the boss deck, all this stuff? It is kind of frustrating when you lose super early for something that's just, like, awful luck. Yeah. But anyways, that's Aeon's End.
Nice. All right, number 4 for me, this is the part of the video where I preface and say, because we didn't say it at the beginning, that this isn't like a ranking of, like, these are my, or at least for me, this isn't like 10 co-op games, and if I ranked my best games, they would be in this order as well. Like, it's not like if I had Gloomhaven on this list, Gloomhaven would have to be number 1 because it's my number 1 in my top 50. Yeah. We consider like how it functions as a co-op game, and we consider like a bunch of other things, so it's not just like, oh, Dylan's top 50 would be in the same order of what co-op games are on there as this list. And I'm prefacing that because this game is, I think on my top 50 was 4 last year, or 6 or something, or somewhere around there. And it's 4 on this list.
Oh, I think I know what it is then.
And it's Marvel Champions. Yeah. So Marvel Champions obviously was going to be on this list because it's a co-op game. Even though I play it mostly solo and enjoy it more solo, I think it's still a great co-op game, specifically at 2 players. When we played it at the cabin, I had a great time. When me and Braden played it on the stream, it was one of my favorite Marvel Champions games I've played. It is just a great game because you're not only cooperatively playing the game when you're actually like in it, but also the deck building, the deck construction part of it is kind of cooperative too, because even when at the cabin, like, you sat next to me when we're doing our deck building, but we're asking each other questions like, so are you including something like this? Okay, well, maybe I won't do that, or maybe I'll go with this aspect, or maybe I'll, like, so that it becomes
even just from the minute of picking your heroes.
Yeah, like, it becomes a full cooperative exercise essentially, and it's I find that deck building portion to be just as just as fun as the actual gameplay itself. And then the cooperative aspect of when you're playing is it's not like, even though like I have my deck and you have yours, there are a lot of cards, and they keep adding more and more every pack that specifically like you can end up using some of my cards, and I can do things to give you stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a keyword that lets you, right?
Yeah, like Avengers Mansion is one of them, and stuff like that, where you can specifically say like, another person can utilize this card or utilize this discount or whatever the case may be. So you actually are integrating across.
I really like that. And I forgot to, I think Legacy Encounters or Legendary Encounters Alien does that, and Aeon's End doesn't, but that's something I really appreciate about this game.
And what I do also really like is that every pack that releases, or not everyone, but like a lot of the packs release, they tend to insert cards in that are specifically with co-op in mind, or specifically with solo in mind, or heroes that are better as co-op heroes or better as solo heroes. So like, it makes it so that, say I'm only playing cooperatively, there might be heroes I skip because it's like, that's a better solo hero, I'm going to gravitate to the co-op heroes. You don't necessarily need to buy every single pack, but you can kind of gravitate to the ones that are like, I play co-op and this card is something that, the person I play with, we can share as we play. I'm going to get that pack so we can have new options to play with. Right. I like how they do that. I like how they're constantly revisiting different aspects of their design. And it's obviously like, there's nothing else I'm going to say about the gameplay. I've talked about this game so much on my channel, or on our channel, but it's a great game. I love it so much, and it plays up to 4. I've never played it with 4 Marvel Champions. Some people adore it at that count. I think that'd be a little bit too much to manage for me, or too much going on. But the fact that you can even play cooperatively up to 4 and have 4 Marvel heroes going in completely different aspects, taking on a boss in this big epic encounter, is awesome as well. So
yeah, you know what I just realized about this too? Not many games allow you to cooperate with, like, you could have this game at home, and Braden or whoever could have the version of their game and like, before you meet, you could be like, hey, we're gonna meet up on the weekend to play Marvel Champions. Let's start cooperating now during the week, and let's text each other about the deck we're building or whatever. Like,
that's what me and Braden did.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can cooperate at your own homes before even meeting up to play the game. It's,
and he uses his cards from whatever he deck builds. I can use mine, or he can more be like, can I borrow your whatever card? Like, it's great. I think like, if this game had existed, even if it was a completely different theme or whatever, when we were like playing Magic the Gathering and and stuff like that, or even like
we
Arkham
would've.
Horror, like
Yeah.
we would have been so into those type of games with that kind of freedom and that no responsibility and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's just a great game. It was going to be on here for sure. It slots at number 4. Probably could have been higher, but there's some other ones that I appreciate the cooperative aspect a little bit more. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say that you made a good reasoning for the fact that it's that you prefer it solo, so that makes sense. But definitely was expecting to see it on the list. All right, on to my number 4, which is MicroMacro Crime City. This is specifically the Full House edition, which I do like a little bit more than the original, but either version is the same, really. I wouldn't, if I'd only played the first one, it wouldn't be anywhere different on my list. It would still come in at this spot. So for anyone who doesn't know, this is basically crime solving Where's Waldo on a giant foldable black and white map. So you have these 16 cases. Each case comes in a little envelope with a series of cards. You have a big map of this city with all kinds of different characters and different things going on. And you're basically going to be given a clue to start. And it's going to say, like, this person's dead body was found in the northeast end of the city by this park. There was a weapon found by the crime scene. Solve the crime. And you can either go through these cards and get additional clues to kind of lead you along the way, or you can just start with kind of the end goal, which is the advanced version of the game, and just sort of retrace these steps. But it's kind of like you see different moments in time. So like someone who you see at one point on the map, you might look around and on the next section of the map, that same person is there. And then you keep looking over to the side and you see that they were picking up something from a store at this other location. So it's all about retracing steps, trying to figure out where to look, looking for clues. You might find something on the ground that actually hints to something on the other end of town because it was bought from this shop that, sells this item. So now you go looking there and you see some suspicious character or whatever. It really does make you feel like a detective, and the cooperative aspect is what makes this game. Yeah. I'm sure it would be fine solo. I haven't tried it solo. I'm sure it would also be fine with I tried once with 4 players, didn't like it anywhere near as much. But as a 2-player game, this game really sings because you have the cooperative aspects of finding things together, the success, the high five when you figure out the crime at the end, or even just splitting up. Like you see something on the map and you're like, hey, you follow that person, I'm going to go over here. I just think 2 players is the perfect count. Yeah. And it's just such a fun, rewarding game, and it is unlike anything else out there. I will say some people will kind of refer to this as more of an activity than a game. I think that's a little unfair and maybe does the game a disservice and might turn people off from playing it because they think like there isn't much of a game there. But I mean, you're still winning or losing the scenario. You're still succeeding or failing. Like there's still gamey aspects of you're figuring out how to get better at the game based on what to look for and how to get better at inferring stuff from the clues you get. So
I think that's splitting hairs anyways, because all games are activities. Activities are a pretty general term.
Yeah, and you can say that about a lot of people say that about roll and writes and things too. So anyways, MicroMacro, awesome game, and they just keep making more of these. I think the 3rd one just came out. This is the 2nd one, and there's going to be a 4th one. You're going to be able to combine the maps, etc. So yeah, MicroMacro Crime City.
It's great. I've only played the tutorial online, and I think I did 1 scenario of the original Crime City as well. And I mean, I really liked it. It's one I'm going to borrow from you at some point and tackle. But again, I do want to tackle it with one other person consistently and go through and just do it as a 2-player thing. I don't want to do it solo.
For sure, that's how I would recommend.
So I will visit it at some point because it looks awesome. So,
yeah. There's MicroMacro.
All right, number 3 for me. This might be the cooperative aspect of this. This might be the strongest co-op game on the list in terms of like how you're cooperating, but the other 2 that are higher than it, I just have a little bit more bias towards and the reasons to put them higher. And I think this one, I
think I know what this is.
I was going to guess where this is on your list, but I'll just say if I was right after. But this is the Crew Mission Deep Sea.
Okay, I was thinking of a different game. But.
So the Crew Mission Deep Sea is a fantastic cooperative game. Like I said, it might be the strongest co-op game on this list in terms of its co-op elements because it's so satisfying when you complete missions in this game. And this is the Mission Deep Sea version just because I prefer it more, but you can go with the original The Crew, then you get unique missions in there. Both are great games, very similar. It's a tough game, and it depends on what mission, like what cards come out and what you're trying to get where, like if the pink 3 is trying to go exactly so you can play the same mission multiple times and have it be easier or harder at different times. So the replay value, even by doing the same missions, is still there. So it adds even more to the replay value of this game. But trying to discern with limited communication, and I love limited communication in co-op games, what other people are trying to do, and using your own strategy to say what do I secretly communicate to them with my one chance to communicate with that limited communication token, and what are they trying to tell me, and based on what they are trying to get, like how do I solve the puzzle that I have with my hand and trying to guess like who has what. Like there's so much going on that when you do pull it off, you just feel like you've all accomplished this together, and as a team you're so satisfied, and it's really hard to replicate that in any of the co-op games that I've listed. Like you can get that feeling, but not quite as strong, I think, as it is in the crew. And it's just such a simple game to teach, and it's so quick. Like the fact that you can sit down and be like, we only have time for one mission is legitimate. You could sit down and do one mission, and it could take like 7 minutes. Like it says 20-minute playtime, but really like a single mission, we've had a single mission sometimes finish in like 5 minutes. Right? So like there's so much flexibility in this game. It's so satisfying to play. It's so fun. There's so many missions. There's so much replay value. Like it's really hard to fault the crew in many ways for what it is. And it's one of those rare cases where the crew by itself stood on its own, and I thought like it doesn't need necessarily a sequel. But now that we've had Mission Deep Sea, and it's like they refined things about the tasks, but without changing the formula, and just gave us new missions. I'm like, man, just keep releasing more versions, because if I can keep getting more missions and you keep refining little things, I'll take it. Like this is great. Give me mission space, or mission. That's the first one.
I was gonna say, especially for the guy who doesn't like the sci-fi theme.
Give me mission jungle. Give me mission fantasy. Whatever. Like just keep going. Like I'll just keep buying them, because like it's inexpensive too. It's like you can probably find this for like $15, $20. Like
the bang for your buck is pretty much second to none. Like,
it's hard to fault it in many ways. Like I said, it probably could have been even higher on my list, but I just have some personal attachments to the other two, and that's why they're going to be higher. But if this is one of the best cooperative games for sure.
Yep, excellent game.
Yep, and I know you're going to have more to say.
No, I think I've said all I need to say. It's excellent. All right, my number 3 is a game that it was hard for me to almost justify having it this high on the list, because I've only played it I think twice, and it's been a while now. It's been probably at least 4 or 5 years. But that is Pandemic Iberia. I guess I have it here. I'm so used to not having the game. Pandemic Iberia. Yeah. So this is for a bit it was a limited edition version. It says limited collector's edition, but it seems to, I don't know if they've been making more copies, because I saw it come back into stock recently. But so this is set in, I believe it's in the 1800s in Iberia, so Spain and Portugal, of course. And it's just a much more thematic, immersive version of Pandemic.
Yep.
The game is more interesting. It plays up to 5 players as well out of the box. So you have different characters. The game has a different arc too, because because of when it's set, you can't fly. There's no planes, right? So you start off, and it's really tough to get around the map. But one of the actions you can do throughout the game is build railways, like build little railway networks. And as you start to build these railways and connect a railway network throughout the map, you can then cover so much ground with just one movement action or whatever. So it's this thing where you can't move much early, but later on you can just like go all over the place. You can move with ships, so you can go around the border of the map, which is cool. You can't actually cure or eradicate diseases. You can only treat them. So you get people who come to like water purification systems. There's little variants in there where you can get people to move towards your hospitals that you can set up. You can play with another variant that gives each of the 4 diseases their own unique like identity in the way it works. Like one disease might multiply a certain way, or might affect your people on the map a certain way. There's just so much cool stuff. The roles are very interesting and different. And again, the artwork, like if you look at just the box cover and you look at all the cards and everything inside the map, everything, like it's just dripping with this kind of like Iberian theme. I love the game, and I want to play it more, but I've just been, even the idea of playing anything Pandemic in the last couple of years has been a bit off-putting. But when the time comes to play again, it will be definitely Pandemic Iberia. And I'm curious, I don't think I've played it with you yet.
No, I haven't played it. I really want to, because I based on everything I've heard, I think this will end up being, also because of how long it's been since I played the original Pandemic and how much I've kind of exhausted myself on that game, I think this will end up being one that just like kind of not takes its place, but anytime I'm itching to play, it'll just be this version over the original, based on what you've told me. Like I'm guessing, but it just sounds really good. Yeah, in terms of like if you're looking for a more basic kind of gateway introductory game, like there's definitely more going on here, so it'd be a bit more of a teach for people. For sure. But if you've played a lot of Pandemic, like the replay value on this is just way higher than the original. So awesome.
Anyways, that is Pandemic Iberia.
Nice. All right, number 2 for me. I'm probably going to surprise a lot of people that it's this high for me, but again, I have a personal attachment, I guess. Not personal attachment, but just I like it a lot. And that is the Mind.
That's the one I was expecting last pick.
Okay.
When you were talking about
yeah, so the Mind is, people like the Mind, but I think I end up being, at least out of the content creators I've seen and stuff, the one who talks about it maybe the most and brings it up a lot and seems to like it the most. But to me, it's just liking limited communication and liking cooperative games already. It's one of those games that just is so unique in that it's about your connection to the people around the table, and I love that so much. It's such, I mean, for a simple game that's just play cards in ascending order, and every card is a single number from 1 to 100, and just play them in ascending order on the table. It should not be this compelling, and yet somehow I always find it to be, because every group I play it with, it's completely different. Because yeah, those are the rules, but like I said before, the rules are more how well do you know the people at the table, or how well will you learn about them as you play, to adapt to how quick they play their cards, how much they hesitate, what a hesitation means, what a quick play means. And then there is still strategy where if you play the 17 and I have the 18, I'm not going to hesitate because there's no one that can go next. So if someone is just slamming a card down, like you shouldn't hesitate. And if anyone does hesitate, that should be an indication to you. It's like, well, they don't have the very next number, because why would they hesitate? And so it's like, but then how close does that mean they are? Do they have the 19 then, and they're worried that now I have the 18, right? Like, so you start doing this decision making, and eventually you do find a way to get it right. And when it does, it feels like you are connecting in this mental, like, unspoken way. It
always feels hard to believe once you've accomplished it. You're like, we did it. What? Like,
yeah, and it's tough to win all the missions. Like I think I've beaten a game at, like, I think at 4 players and at 2 players, but just because you beat it at 2 players, if say we win at 2 players, I haven't won it with another person at 2 players, or someone who plays differently. I was gonna say, it's not
like those other games where when you win, you're like, I know the formula, I'm just gonna win every time. Like,
and you can play the hard mode after, you play it blind, and you reveal them after. Like, there's for a little game like this, there's a lot to it. I won't get into it here, but if you watch our video games that teach you, I get into a little bit more about why I think it's even extra special and everything. There are some other, more existential reasons and stuff. But I love this game. It's it's if I was just ranking all these games as what are my favorite games, regardless of just the co-op aspects, it probably wouldn't be this high. It might even be closer to the bottom, or even maybe not on the list. But for the co-op elements specifically in this game, I just love it so much, and I couldn't. Every time I started ranking, I'm like, no, it's higher, no, it's higher, no, it's higher, and it ended up slotting at 2. So
nice. I struggled with this one because it was on my short list, but I think when I ranked my 15-ish game, I think I had it at like number 12 or 13, and I think the reason is that when I want to play board games, like when I'm in the mood for playing board games, I'm getting together with friends, I'm rarely. Like, I rarely feel drawn to play the Mind. Like, we're getting together, we haven't played games in a while, I'm not going to pick the Mind. The Mind feels like it's almost a better fit when I'm not in the mood to play, like, a board game, and it just kind of comes up. Every time I've played it, I've had a blast with it, and I'm always reminded, like, man, that's still so good. But then time goes on, and I just feel like I'm never the one to feel that urge to play it or say, let's play it. But every time we play it, it continues to surprise me.
It's a situational game.
Yes, very much.
But when you have the right situation and it's the right group, I think it's always going to be something that you're like, wow, like, surprising. I mean, not everybody, but like for me, it always ends up being a surprise hit.
Yeah, and like you said, there's truly no other cooperative game we've played that does what that does. Like, I know people have talked about the game, which we haven't played, or I think you...
I haven't.
Oh,
but it doesn't have the mental connection aspect to it.
Okay.
Not in this way anyways. So yeah,
cool.
That's
nice
mine.
pick.
Number 2.
Number 2. All right. My number 2. I don't need to know. I know what number 2 pick is. My number 2 pick is one that Dylan has already spoken about, and that is Just One.
Yeah.
So I won't say a whole lot more about it because I think you covered a lot of the bases. One thing I will point out that I really like about it, and this is something I like a lot in cooperative games that, I won't say anything further because it's my next pick, but where your role can change. You don't always have the same role. So I feel like when I'm the person guessing and everyone else is giving the clues, like, I look forward to that when it comes up. But then as soon as it's over, I'm excited to get the little whiteboard with the pen back in my hand too. Like, I get equally excited about both of the roles.
Yeah.
And that helps keep the game fresh because you're not always doing the same thing. And the other thing I'll mention is, of all the kind of like party games that we play that have a loose scoring system, we talk a lot on this channel about things like Wavelength and Monstrosity, and we just talked about Clover and stuff.
Yep.
This is the point system that I actually like the most and that we actually follow the most. A lot of the time when we play Wavelength, sometimes we play with the points, sometimes we don't. Monstrosity, sometimes we keep track of the points, sometimes it doesn't really matter, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in Just One, I feel like we're always playing to that target of 13 because it's legitimately a really difficult target to reach.
Yeah.
Because not only is there that decision of like, do you make the guess, and if you get the guess wrong, you lose an additional card from your possible 13. So sometimes it's better to just say like, I can't even guess because I don't even know where to start, and just lose the 1 point instead of 2. But I think the best, I've played it like countless times. I feel like the best I've ever done in a group is like maybe like 10 out of 13.
Yeah.
So I really like that the point system feels like something you really do want to actually come back to and aim for. But yeah, anyway, amazing game. I really like it. And it's one that continues to grow on me as well, like you've mentioned. I think when I first played it, I didn't think it would ever make my top 50. And the last time we did our top 50, I think I had it in the 30s somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome game. And like you said, you don't even need to respect the player count of 7. As long as you have something else to write on, the game still works. It's
Great
just
choice.
one.
Yeah, I won't add anything else to it I already talked about, but yeah, great choice. Happy to see it that high. Do you know what my number one's going to be? Or you have no idea?
I would guess Pandemic Legacy Season 1, or I'm going to guess, if not, it can't be Oathsworn. You're too early into that. I'm going to guess Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
No, it's Ghost Stories.
Oh, of course. Well, I knew this was going to be on your list, but I forgot all about it now.
I love this game, and I think it is my favorite. Well, it is my favorite cooperative game because it is one, a combination of being really difficult, and so obviously really satisfying when you win. But because of how difficult it is, and because of how much stuff you're managing, in the same vein as like Pandemic, the loops, all this stuff going wrong. It's always everyone laughing around the table, and I think it works at every player count, and I actually think I like it the best at 4. And that's usually not rare, but I usually kind of gravitate towards lower player counts, especially in co-op games. This one specifically, and you can play it solo. I mean, like you can play it across every player count, but 4 has always been so much fun when we play with all the player powers in effect. And because the layout of location tiles, there's 9 locations in the middle, is different every game. Even just seeing where the locations are, which ones are at the edge of the board, which one's in the middle and is the most accessible, changes the way you're going to approach the game, and maybe which player powers that you're going to be the strongest in that particular game. Which of the I can't remember the name of it, but essentially the boss character that you have to beat to win. Which one is going to be in the game, and you don't not knowing which one it is, and then having it come on and be like, oh, that's a really difficult one, or that's an easier one, or this is like this changes the way we're approaching things. Like it is just. I don't play this enough, but every time I play it, it ends up being one of those things where everyone involved is like, man, like let's play it again right away. Like let's just go again. Like it's so much fun, and I need to suggest it more, especially when we're gonna have 4 players, because I think it continues to surprise people so much. And if I keep playing it enough, there's already expansions out that I haven't even explored that have been out for a while that I would explore if I was getting into the table more. So.
Right. And I think each of the characters has 2 possible
Yeah,
powers
you
you
can
can
use
play
either
with
side.
too, right?
Yeah.
There's
There's
like
a lot of
different board
variability
layout and everything,
A lot of variability. I mean, you never know which ghosts are going to come on in what order, and managing them and having to like, where are you going to move and which actions are you going to take in the middle is super fun. Using like the golden Buddha tokens and stuff like that to like stop ghosts from coming out. Like there's so much going on, but it's just like, and yeah, it's one of the more complicated ones on this list anyway, so it's not going to be like a super introductory game. But again, because it's co-op, you can help each other out a little bit. So yeah. I love this game so much. When we were going to do this list, I was fairly certain, like 99% from the start. I'm pretty sure Ghost Stories is going to be my number 1. I'll think about it a little bit, but it is. It's probably going to take something really special to beat it. I love it. If you haven't played it, and I know it's more of a hidden gem for some people, really recommend checking it out.
Yeah, and it's probably the hardest co-op game we've ever played, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
There's a 2018 or 19 version that they redid called Last Bastion. So if anyone's familiar with that, this is basically they turned this into Last Bastion. But yeah, this is one that was very much all over the place for me in my list of picks. I thought it was going to be way higher at first, and the more I thought of it, and I don't know, I think I just need to play it again, because even though we've enjoyed it every time we've played it, and I'm always impressed by how like difficult it is and all this, for some reason when I come over and I see it on your shelf and it's like, what are we going to play today or whatever, I just don't feel the pull to play it. Right. Even though I know that when it gets to the table, we're going to be sitting there going like, man, this game's good and it's so tough, and how are we supposed to beat this? And like, I know I'm going to enjoy it, but there's just something that prevents me from being excited about being like, let's play that today.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is, but it's a really good game.
We'll fix that soon.
We should. We should.
Number 1, Ghost Stories.
Very nice, very nice. Okay.
I know what your number 1 is.
Yeah, of course.
I would have guessed this is your number 1 right before we started the list, and I would have been right.
And I think anyone who's watched the channel for at least like 6 months, a year, or whatever, would probably this wouldn't come as a surprise to me either. This is my own copy of the Crew Mission Deep Sea. Yeah. So, what else is there to say that Dylan hasn't already said? I mean, I guess you didn't comment on the captain part, the leader of the mission or whatever it's called. So that's another aspect of the cooperation that I love, because it gives you, like, not only do you already have your own private set of cards and you can't communicate to anyone, you have that one radio token, so you have to choose, like, how are you going to communicate that one crucial piece of information. But in true fashion, and this is what I stopped myself from saying when I was talking about just one with the different roles, is even though you're technically playing the game the same way as the captain, you start off with a different, like, you have that added level of responsibility, because first off, you get first choice. Like, on when the tasks come out, you can pass on a task and look at your hand and say, okay, I'm going to pass, and I'm going to hope that maybe that person's going to pick that task instead. So there's a little bit of play in terms of the tasks. And then you also are starting the first trick of the first round. And a lot of the time, because it's whoever's holding that 4 submarine card is the captain, and you get to play the first card. And a lot of the time, once you play a card, sometimes that limits what people can play. And sometimes you get into this cycle where, like, I played a card, no one had that color, I win the trick. And I'm like, oh, I didn't want to win the trick. Okay, now I'll play this card. And then everyone at the table kind of groans and reluctantly plays the card, and then you win the trick again, and you're like, oh no, like, how am I going to get someone else to win the trick so that they can take over and lead the next one? And that added responsibility just of being that kind of the captain at the start and having that just adds another element to the game that, like, the game was already amazing, even if there was no captain or if there was some other way to deal with it. But I just really like what it does there. So
awesome.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say real quick is, I know you said the rewarding feeling after you win, but even when you lose, that's one of my favorite parts of the game, because afterwards going like, well, why didn't you, like, you showed me that card, like, you played this one card and showed me that, like, the 8 was the highest green card in your hand, but, like, 8's already high, like, why didn't you play this other thing? So, oh yeah, no, I could have done this other. It's the debriefing at the end of the round and the kind of figuring out where you went wrong or where you could have done things differently. I just love this game.
Awesome choice.
Favorite cooperative game by a mile.
Yeah, I can't argue with it in spot there. Like I said, I probably could have put mine there and I would have been okay with it, but yeah, great choice.
Thank you.
That is it. Those are our 10, or just 20 total cooperative games. Maybe not 20 total, because there's
it's
crossovers.
like 16 or something like that. Yeah, a couple crossovers.
But let us know in the comments what you thought of our picks. If there's any we missed, I think there's some that people are going to be like, how do you not have Spirit Island on there? And, like, if they haven't heard us talk about it before. And there are some other ones that when I was looking that we haven't played that are specifically just gaps in our board game knowledge. But this is out of the ones we played, these are our choices. Let us know in the comments which ones surprised you the most, which ones you agree with the most, which ones you want us to play so we can
which ones have we overlooked.
Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.